It's so good to practice together. The magic bullet. So welcome. My name is Thia, and I see faces I know and faces I don't know, which is a good thing. Take a minute to look around the room and say hello to your Sangha tonight. See who's here. I'd like to open tonight with a piece from Panna children. And she says, we think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, room for relief, for misery and for joy. So her particular brand of wisdom is one of my favorites. It's laced with a lot of humor and no-nonsense teaching. And tonight we're looking at the wisdom aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's the third in a three-part series. And I knew that when I was desiring to learn and practice meditation, I somehow sensed ease and wisdom might be available here. I wasn't sure why or how. I had met someone who embodied those qualities, but I was also kind of following the hype. The monetization of meditation was beginning to point me in this direction. So no matter what brings us here, we almost always begin by practicing how to be still and how to be quiet. And I think it's amazing that we have to learn to do this. And yet, this is where we find ourselves today. When we're still and quiet, we get to really experience how wild things are inside and outside. It feels uncontrollable, really, the body and the mind, and in some ways it truly is. Then we're instructed to cultivate a daily inner and outer practice of investigation, to just whatever is happening, to practice acceptance with it, letting it in, and maybe letting it go. So we learn to observe the mind and these relentless streams of planning and remembering, just ping-ponging back and forth. And so much of the time, not just being right here. So basically, the thing that I want you to remember tonight is that we're just learning how to relax and be aware. That's the main thing. But there's going to be a lot more things, so maybe we can circle back to that at the end. At some point in every meditation tradition, the Four Noble Truths are introduced because the Buddha pointed to these as the root teaching for all meditation schools, and they still are. 3 of the 4 truths point directly to suffering, and we're instructed to understand suffering. That brings compassion, patience, and a whole lot of other good qualities into our life. The 4th Noble Truth is called the way to the end of suffering. And this is what we've been studying recently, the 4th Noble Truth. It's also called the Eightfold Path. So some in this room have been studying this for decades. And remember that these teachings are about 2,600 years old. So this has been around for a while, and it's presenting itself again to us tonight. So tonight is the culmination of what is commonly referred to as the teaching sequence of the Eightfold Path. And I'll circle back to that term. And we actually have a few handouts scattered around. I think there's more at the front and there's none at the back. If you see any that are unclaimed, could you kind of just pass them towards the back? Thank you. And I posted online for the Zoomers a link. I'm happy to send you this handout. Often for me, looking at a chart is so helpful because of all the overlapping pieces of this teaching. But what really gets my attention is the name of this path. It's called the Path to Freedom from Suffering. And that's a huge claim, isn't it? So the recap is 2 weeks ago, we were instructed that we undertake behavior that is ethical and kind. We basically clean up our act as much as we can every day. Sila, the ethical part of the training. Then we're instructed to practice mindfulness plus formal meditation. So that's mindfulness on the cushion and mindfulness off the cushion every day using inner and outer investigation. And this is how we learn to manage energies that are wholesome and energies that are unwholesome, and how to cultivate some form of steadiness, which is so much needed in these times today. And as these two first parts become embedded in our life, we circle back to the questions that may have set us on the path, pointing back to what is called the view and the intention on the path. And we'll circle back to this again and again, hopefully with deeper insights a little bit each time, deeper. So the Buddha Dharma wisdom teachings are multifaceted, they're complex, they layer, they overlap. And so as you look at this chart, I'm hoping that you can kind of see the circular nature of the Fourth Noble Truth and the Eightfold Path, and see why the Buddha said when he began to teach that he was setting the wheel of the Dharma in motion. And so on here tonight, we're at the third part, which is actually also the first part, because we have to have some wisdom to even begin to investigate the path. And I'm so grateful that at some point in my life, I got curious and I felt drawn to these teachings. So we have now in the wisdom sector, right view and right intention. Those are the two components of this part that we're looking at tonight. So, so, so important. Wisdom, as I said, is the culmination and the origination of the path in the same way that the Four Noble Truths are the bedrock of the path, and they're also the culmination of the Eightfold teachings. We come right back to that. So let's look at some definitions of wisdom, some reflections from interviews that I did with folks in the Sangha, and some comments from the Buddha Dharma. And then we'll call it a night with some metta meditation to close us out. So the common definition of wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. This could refer to so many things, though. So what sets the Buddha Dharma apart in this wisdom sector? I asked two of my Sangha friends about wisdom, what they thought. And one of them said, well, wisdom has an impersonal quality to it. It's able to be objective. We humans have the heavy filters of personal experience. I prefer this, I want this. And it colors our decisions, our words, our actions. And it can be pretty hard to be objective. But with wisdom, we can sense the best decision despite our personal preferences. Wisdom has a big picture aspect to it, not just what benefits me, but what is beneficial for everybody. So my takeaways from that, the big takeaway was the impersonal or impartial nature of wisdom that gives it objectivity, working as much as possible with what we know to be true despite personal bias or preference. Also, the big picture part of this points to an understanding of causality, how things are related, how they change, how they impact one another. One event always leads to another in some way, shape, or form, the way that all of our actions and thoughts and speech leads to impacts all around us, whether we intend that or not. So we can say that discernment is definitely a part of wisdom, using good judgment and insight to make our decisions. The next person that I asked said, wisdom means a person can see what needs to happen and also has the ability to follow through with what needs to be done, even and especially when it's personally painful to do so. Again, we get to see that wisdom goes beyond just what is good for me. It considers the best course of action or often non-action for as many folks as possible. We look at the ripple effect, the idea of the greater good, or the harm that may come out of a choice that we make. I'm fond of the saying, a rising tide floats all boats. And I think this ties in with this idea of wisdom. Also, from this second interview, I got the feeling of courage from this person. And I know that they had recently done a hard thing that benefited more than just themselves. This is the heart energy. Courage comes from the French word for heart. And it's not just head energy in this wisdom that's implied with her statement of knowing what to do and being able to follow up on it, even when it's difficult to do so. Some synonyms for wisdom are insight, which is the name of our path, perception, discernment, and penetration. Sayadaw U Tejaniya says, many yogis make the mistake of expecting good experiences when they meditate, instead of just trying to work with craving or aversion or delusion, all the stuff that comes up on the regular. Once we can handle these unwholesome roots, good experiences naturally follow, because that stuff doesn't shake us up so much. We're able to go, oh, there it is again. We come into some natural wisdom. That is a penetrating form of wisdom, getting through these unpleasant parts, doing what's hard to do in order to understand our difficulties, and then reap the reward of this fragrant blossom of wisdom. This is the kind of practice that the kind of freedom that arises with this kind of practice. And next we hear from the Buddha Dharma. This is Sariputta, one of the Buddha's closest buddies, from the Majjhima Nikaya 43. When a meditator comes to him and says, how is a wise person defined? He simply answers, a wise person is someone who understands suffering. That says a lot in this day and time. In the Eightfold Path teachings, there are two factors to this wisdom component, and they are, as I said, skillful view and skillful intention. And so in my experience, it's really beneficial to check several times a day, what views am I holding here? What are my intentions here? Especially if there's something difficult to work through. It helps me see if I'm on track or whether I need to adjust my attitude or my actions. The original text for reference of this is also in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's called the Samaditi Sutta, number 9, and it's on right view, and it's a very long sutta. This is an important teaching, this right view teaching, Because wisdom can be practiced in many, many, many ways, from simple kindnesses to brokering real international peace agreements, or even just volunteering with the local food kitchen, or complimenting a stranger in the grocery store. Nothing is too small. If we have skillful views and skillful intentions, our minds will naturally incline in this direction. We begin to easily think about what is wholesome, what is not wholesome, what possible outcomes might be for our actions, our words, our deeds. We easily consider and know how to nourish ourselves, not just with food, but with wise company and kind company. We're more careful with our sense gates, what we say, what we hear, what we take in, watch on TV, that kind of stuff. And we begin to have curiosity about our thoughts and our actions. We might be willing to take more time to engage with people, not be quite so fast, not so transactional. We may even become curious about the aggregates, asking, what am I? Or interested in the three characteristics, asking, what is life about? It becomes easier and easier to not participate in cruelty, even on a subtle level. And this is all part of right view or skillful view. So these behaviors link and overlap with skillful intention. Like so many philosophical ideas, they're closely related. Skillful intention includes renunciation of greed, detaching from purely self-centered ideas, letting go of ill will, the clear seeing and management of unruly ways or unkind ways of thinking, speaking, or acting, and nurturing the daily practice of goodwill or kindness. So with this, we cultivate a bright mindset, and it affects the quality of our days, and it's good for those around us. It rubs off on people. Once you begin to practice this way, it just feels right. It feels wise. So I'm not trying for sainthood, as one Sangha friend says, but I do hope to be a good person. And I think sometimes, not sometimes, but every day, make this your view and your intention, intending your personal best, so to speak. And don't expect any kudos, because virtue is its own reward, a quiet reward, and some may even resent you for wholesomeness. So here we are at the end of the year, in the fall. There is this unspoken, very palpable feeling of renunciation, quite opposite to the conspicuous consumption of the holidays. We see it mostly in nature, the falling of the leaves, the cooling of the air, the lack of the abundance and heat that summer brings. Shifting into a deeper and slower time, a different season. In old days, this might be a time to make sure you were on good terms with your neighbors. In case the winter months were extra cold or extra cruel, you might need to call on them for something, or you might need help with something that you happen to have or they do not have. Those were days before we all had any kind of food we desired at any time of the night or day, and before we learned this behavior of retreating to our devices for some semblance of connection. So yes, renunciation is a part of this multifaceted jewel that we call wisdom. And so another question we might ask ourselves when we practice in this winter time is, what is left in the wake of letting go? Just close your eyes for one moment. What is left in the wake of letting go? And how does that feel in your body as you open your eyes? It's a good question to practice with. We're in the season now where we can slow down, we can reflect on our lives, considering families, friendships, letting go of meanness, of extra belongings. We have so much. Most of us have much more than we need. Maybe these teachings on wisdom are an invitation to connection and to simplicity. And maybe this season can be a template for embracing wisdom all year long. So I offer this for your consideration tonight. Thank you for your kind attention, for your ears.